is something called double homelessness, where people who get reintegrated in their families often leave their families again because they're so. Maybe the family was abusive in the first place, maybe there was some other reason, or maybe they're so used to being homeless that they just go back wandering again, or maybe their mental health conditions are still not resolved or the family is not able to take care of it. That's why double homelessness is happening.
Hello, wonderful listeners and viewers. Welcome to another thought-provoking episode of the PsyK Talks. I am your host, Kirti, a practicing psychologist and also the founder of the PsyKlife. Today's episode holds great value because we would be talking about topics that require both attention and compassion. We would be talking about suicide, intersectionality of disability, inclusivity, and mental health. It is important to approach such discussions with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to reducing stigma. And therefore, we have a very special guest with us today, Ms. Sanjana. Ms. Sanjana holds a master's degree in social work and mental health, and with over 7 years of facilitation experience, she has worked with educators, people from low-income communities, young adults, and is making sure that mental health reaches all those who are in need. I'm very happy to have you with us today, Ms. Sanjana. Before we begin with today's episode, here's a little gentle reminder for all of you. If you or a loved one is looking for mental health help, please know that help is available. You can reach out for free therapy sessions at our official website www.thepsyklife.com or call our mental health helpline at 08067335511. Let's begin with today's episode then. Welcome Sanjana to the PsyK Talks. Very, very happy to have you.
Same here. I'm so excited for this. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's a delight. So how about we start by understanding a little bit about your area of work? What kind of work do you do? And if you could help our viewers understand social work, psychology, community mental health. I think these are all words that people often mix up. Ki ye sab hota kya hai? So if you could help us with that.
Yeah, I think this is a question that is often asked at social gatherings also when people ask me what I do, and when I say I'm a social worker, I think the first question is, "Acha, but kaam ke liye kya karte ho?" You know, people think that it's just a hobby. So I would like to start by saying that I have studied psychology for 7 years, and I am not a psychologist. I'm a social worker in mental health. And my work comprises of going beyond the individual, going beyond one person's psyche or mind, and looking at various factors which is surrounded around everyone. You know, it could be the society, the people around us, the communities, the political situation, caste, gender, a lot of issues that are constantly overpowering our mental health, influencing us. Those are the areas that I work in. Currently, I'm working on 2 projects, which is related to suicide prevention and eating disorders. So these are my 2 areas, and that's what I do.
Okay. I think as a psychologist, listening to a view like this is definitely intriguing, you know, where you are understanding individuals beyond the individual. So as a psychologist, we work on ki us individual ke thoughts kya hai, behaviors kya hai, feelings kya. We are very much about the individual. Definitely we take into account other things. But then even just the ideologies, just the environment around, just everything around that is happening with the individual is equally important. I think that's interesting. Okay. You mentioned about working on a project around suicide prevention. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So I am currently the project coordinator at Outlive is a program on suicide prevention, which is run by Sanjana, Quicksand Studio, and Center for Mental Health Law and Policy. We basically work with young adults who fall into the age group of 18 to 25. And one might ask, why just 18 to 25? Suicide is something that affects all of us. But the reason we specifically speak to young adults is because suicide is the leading cause of death in India in this age group. So all our interventions are directed towards this age category. So we conduct multiple workshops, we have support groups, we have peer support happening. We have recently launched chat application. It's a web-based app where anyone can seek help. It is free of cost. So there are multiple interventions that we have in place, and the best thing that I love about our project is these things are not designed by us. these were things which came from our youth consultations.
Okay.
So often what happens is हमने masters कर लिया, bachelors कर लिया, PhD कर लिया, बाहर जाके कर लिया. We think that we know everything. We know how to solve and improve mental health of our communities. However, when this project was launched, in the first year, the Uplift team spoke to young adults who have thoughts of suicide themselves, or maybe who are caregivers, or maybe people who are working in mental health spaces, or just general young adults, and asked them, what is it that you need?
Right.
What are the barriers that you face? What do you do when you have a mental health challenge?
Right.
From all the consultations, whatever challenges and possible solutions that we shared, we combined those and then spent 3 years building those interventions and implementing that in the community. So that's what we do.
Quite interesting. Would you like to share a little bit about these interventions? कि exactly आप क्या करते हो? How do you support somebody who's probably having suicidal thoughts, or somebody who's just feeling too distressed right now? What kind of intervention do you provide?
So, सबसे पहले people would say that we don't want to talk about suicide and we don't even know how to talk about suicide. Or someone might ask, why do we even need to talk about this? You know, already mental health is something
a lot of people are talking about.
And suicide तक क्यों जाना? We mental health के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं. Maybe these challenges come. So to address that, we have sensitization sessions and workshops which answer these questions.
Okay.
So we conduct these in colleges and community-based organizations, which are multiple NGOs in Delhi, Mumbai, and Pune. And we talk about the importance of talking about suicide, how to talk about it, why to talk about it, some statistics, how do you help yourself if you're going through these thoughts, how do you help your friends who might be having these thoughts, and we provide them ample of resources.
Okay.
Secondly, people might say, okay, now I know suicide prevention is important, but how do I really support my friends? Okay, I know what vocabulary to use, what resources to have, but how do I really support them? Then we have elaborative trainings for that as well. So we conduct gatekeeper training.
QPR gatekeeper training.
Yes, so that is one way, but we also have a simplified version of it, which is just a 2.5-hour training that we conduct in colleges, so that this information is very easy and digestible for students. And this is not just for psychology students; it's for any field.
Just like CPR is not just for medical students; it's something that everybody should
know. Exactly. Then one thing which came from our consultations was youth said that we feel the safest to talk to our peers. अगर हमें कोई दिक्कत है, we would not go to our parents, and therapy is not affordable. We would like to talk to our friends.
Right.
So we have a peer support program as well, where we provide a 30-hour long training to college students who are interested, and it's a very comprehensive plan on how to support somebody who might be having these thoughts.
Okay.
For these peer supporters, we have peer mentors who supervise them and also undergo training. And then we have launched an anonymous free chat app that I've told you, which is available. It's a web-based app, so you don't need an application. A lot of people might not have phones.
Right.
You know, they might not be able to access these services. So it's just a web-based app. It's anonymous. It's completely free of cost, so people can talk about their emotions. We have multiple free resources to read, understand as well. And people who actually talk to them are the trained peer supporters. Who
are they psychologists?
No. So you don't have to be a psychologist to talk to somebody.
Also to provide psychological first aid.
Yeah.
Sort of help that they're providing.
They go through like a 30-hour long training. So, and you know, one thing that I really like about Sangat in general is that they work a lot on lay counselors. Lay counselors would mean people who don't have a background in psychology but are first line responders to any situation. And we all know that we don't have enough professionals, and the mental health burden is extremely high in India. So we need to equip more people with
I think this is psychological first aid that we are somewhere talking about, you know, which is open to everybody, whether you are a social worker, whether you're a random individual, you know.
Absolutely.
You can always train. Even at PsyKlife, we provide psychological first aid trainings, we provide QPR trainings, again with the same motive, you know, to make everybody aware of these things.
Absolutely.
And, you know, providing help becomes easy. Sanjana, I would like to ask you, from your experience with so many individuals, why do you think a person gets suicidal thoughts, or why does a person decide suicide to be the solution of things?
It's not an easy answer. There is no one answer for this. There can be multiple causes. Often we've seen that these causes are societal in nature, they are external in nature. People think that suicide is attempted by people who have mental health conditions. However, research tells us that only 50% or maybe less than 50% of people who die by suicide had a mental health condition. The rest did not. So why do they die of suicide? So it could be, one person might have gone through extreme bullying, marginalization, discrimination on the basis of their identity, their caste, their gender, how they speak, how they look, their body. They might have gone through abuse, sexual, physical, financial abuse as well, emotional. There is a lot of stress that youth undergo. It could be academic, it could be friends, peers related, it could be relationship issues.
Right.
Actually, people do not see relationships as a valid enough reason for somebody to go into distress. But most of the calls, I think this statistic was shared by one of the helplines for suicide. They said that 60% of the calls we have are related to relationships.
Even at our helpline,
Yeah.
when I connect with my team or for the helpline that we function, majority of the issues are around relationship issues that youth and individuals in general are going through.
I remember when I was in school, I was one of those people who started dating early, and I remember being bullied because of that so much by my peers, by my professors,
Teachers
and
also.
teachers. And they often think that a relationship is like, why would you do that, and why would you get stressed about it? This is such a wrong thing to do. But
It's a petty issue.
It's a petty issue. But we don't understand that love, belongingness is such an integral part of humanness, and that can really change the course of your life.
Also, who are we to decide whether an issue is petty or not?
Yeah.
I might get triggered by something which might be completely okay to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. I like the work that you're doing here. अब मुझे बहुत ही easy language में बताओ a quick guide on how we can help someone who is either suicidal or somebody who's just in distress. So, what would be your go-to steps to help somebody?
Kirti, I wish there was a quick guide to this. I really, really wish there was a quick guide to this, honestly. But I think I would say that a good time to talk about suicide is when you don't have the need to talk about suicide. So checking with your friends regularly. It could literally mean हम random chit chat करते हैं when we are chilling. So just ask, how are you doing? If you see that your friends look stressed, just ask them, you look stressed today. Is there anything I can help you with? If you can see that some of your peers are missing classes, not able to keep up with assignments, maybe
There's a habit change. There's a change in the routine that they
like just be observant. Don't be hesitant in talking about emotions when it comes to yourself and others. And if I really have to share a quick guide, something that we talk about in our workshops is called ACT. So A is called for awareness, C is caring, and T is talking.
Okay.
So A, have the awareness of what is the problem. C is care for others or yourself. And T, talk or seek therapy. So maybe this can be an easy acronym for people to follow for themselves and others.
Okay, I think we've been talking a lot about stigma also through our episodes as well and otherwise also. How do you think we can eradicate stigma as somebody in the field, as somebody working around social work and at the community level, Sanjana? What do you think could be some go-to things that at an individual or a community level that we could do just a stigma eradicated, mental health related?
I think stigma comes from silence. When you are silent about something, you don't know about it. So when you don't know about it, you have misconceptions related to it. And when you have misconceptions related to it, you have a stigmatized attitude to it. outside.
Right.
So the more you talk, the more you educate yourself and others, the more you're able to destigmatize your mind and your behaviors towards any situation.
Right.
That's how I see it.
So you've very easily related education, awareness, talking about it
Yeah.
in order to eradicate stigma. I think that's a very crisp and clear answer that our viewers would definitely love. So Sanjana, we also wanted your insights on the intersectionality between inclusivity, disability and mental health. What do you have to say about that?
I think without having inclusion in your interventions, you cannot help everyone.
Right.
You will continue to help only one section of the society if you are only thinking from one lens. That is why it's very important for us to have सबसे पहले an inclusivity.
Right.
So if you are designing anything, forget mental health, anything, you need to have people from different genders, different castes, different political ideologies, different sexualities, right? Different age groups as well. When you have all these in consideration, that's when you design something and that's when you deliver an inclusive intervention. You need to see if I'm doing anything, how does this influence a particular caste? How does this influence the disabled community? For example, not just in the way you are talking about your things, but even if you're holding events. For example, is my when I'm having the therapy sessions or my workshops, is my office or space accessible for somebody who has a physical disability? These are also ways of thinking of inclusion in your work. So think mentally, think behaviorally, think physically in the social structures that you're creating around your work. Everything needs to at least touch different sections of society. That's how I would put it.
Sanjana, what do you have to say when it comes to the role of online communities and social media and being more inclusive to people? What do you have to say about that?
So it's very important to post inclusively that any disabled person who might be deaf or might be blind or might have other intellectual disabilities are able to understand the content. So like image descriptions, alt text, closed captions, describing the colors in your photographs and keeping the language as simple as possible. We have come to a point in the world where we think the more difficult our words are, the more smart
we are.
Yeah, exactly. But ऐसा नहीं है. The easier our words are, it's accessible to everyone. So I just think that's how we can talk online as well. And social media is a very, very powerful tool of communication. Most of us, what do we do when we're bored? We scroll.
Even when we're busy, I think that's the only thing we're doing the entire day.
Scrolling. So to be mindful of what we're sharing, how we're sharing, is it safe? Is it credible? A lot of people just post whatever they think. I think if we need to put credible information as well. So I think these are some things that we can keep in mind.
In order to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
How has your experience been when it comes to working with diverse populations? So you are in the field for such a long time, you do facilitation, workshops and all of that. How does it personally feel just connecting to people with such diversity?
Honestly, it feels very overwhelming. I think I'm constantly learning from the community more than giving to them. So I've worked with young students and the kind of honesty and genuinity they have towards their emotions. It's so nice to be reminded of that. When I work with high school students, I'm reminded of how tough this time is. I remember high school was so tough for me. How was it for you?
Definitely. So I was brought up in a boarding school.
Oh.
So there was a schedule that we had and there was so many extracurriculars that we had to keep in mind.
Yeah.
It wasn't very, very tough, to be honest. Like back then we did not even know about mental health. These were not conversations that were taking place. But I do have good memories of that time. Definitely.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, I think every phase, every kind of population that I work with, either be social workers, professors, disabled groups, low-income communities, it's a very heartwarming experience. So even till today, how I work is, I work as a part-time or a freelancer in any organization that I join.
Okay.
Because I hate the idea of going to the office every day.
Right.
I know I will have to change that sometime because I need to also financially support myself. But my ideal work life would be कि मैं maximum 3 दिन या 2 दिन ऑफिस जा रही हूँ and बाकी time I'm in the field. Because the kind of experiences you get there, that is what you need to put in your work and your projects, and that's what you need to evaluate.
Not just consuming the experience, but I also feel कि जो हम change on field ला पाएंगे, you know, when we are working with them on field rather than in our office setups.
Yeah.
I think that is also where you're contributing more. So we're definitely learning and experiences and all of that is there. But I think contribution के point of view से भी on field is what we need to get
True,
into.
but you know, there's also projects which would hire lay counselors, ASHA workers, social workers. कि ठीक है, हमने design कर दिया project. Now we will pass it on to this partner organization and they will go and deliver it. But again, you are not understanding firsthand the challenges that community faces.
Right.
For example, when I was working with homeless communities in Chennai, I thought I'm doing such great work. And people who are homeless, we invite them in the shelter homes. We give them, we take care of them physically, emotionally, socially. कि उनकी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करवा रहे हैं, आधार कार्ड बनवा रहे हैं, उनको कपड़े, मेबी और जॉब ये सब दे रहे हैं. एंड देन वी हैड अ रीइंटीग्रेशन टीम जो उनका घर ढूंढते रहते थे.
ठीक है.
घर का है. फाइनली घर मिलता था, हम उनको रीइंटीग्रेट करते थे. एंड I used to think, wow, we've done such a great job. And then this naive social worker in me understood that there's something called double homelessness, where people who get reintegrated in their families often leave their families again because they're so, maybe the family was abusive in the first place, maybe there was some other reason, or maybe they're so used to being homeless that they just go back wandering again, or maybe their mental health conditions are still not resolved or the family is not able to take care of it. That's why double homelessness is happening. When I learned about these challenges, my perspective towards designing interventions completely changed.
Right.
कि मुझे ये सब पता ही कैसे लगेगा if I'm not on the field.
Right.
So this is quite important.
Definitely. You hold so much of experience, I mean, just with everything that you're sharing. What do you have to say about the scope if we talk about from the perspective of students who would want to get into social work? Or you have both psychology, social work experience. So what do you have to say about the scope around this?
Scope is quite vast if you read on papers. Okay? And if you are somebody like me who likes to work outside the room, outside one-on-one sessions, then social work is definitely something that you can look at. I started with psychology. मुझे social work के बारे में पता भी नहीं था. However, when I was doing my bachelor's in Tamil Nadu, I did multiple internships.
Right.
I started interning when I was in 11th grade. I did my first clinical internship then. So I was very focused कि मुझे तो
on field करना है.
नहीं, on field नहीं, कि मुझे तो therapy करनी है.
अच्छा, ठीक है.
And it was in 2018 or 17. I joined a dance movement therapist who used to assist neurodivergent children.
Okay.
And then I used to observe their occupational therapy, alag-alag therapies also. And my perspective towards psychology completely changed. I saw that parents, अगर 8 o'clock the school opens, parents would drop their kids at 7 outside the gate and just leave. And that would make me so angry. या फिर if the pickup time is 2 o'clock, they would come at 3. And then I was just so angry, don't you realize that your child has needs and you need to pick them up? But I got to know that parents have to work 2 jobs because raising a child with disability and helping them with their mental health needs, their physical needs is quite expensive. So they have 2 jobs and that's why they need to do all of this.
Right.
When I started seeing this, I felt कि मुझे खाली बच्चे को हेल्प नहीं करना है, मुझे फैमिली को भी हेल्प करना है.
You want to take it to
Yeah, but उनकी 2 जॉब्स क्यों हैं? हम उन्हें कोई सोशल सिक्योरिटी क्यों नहीं प्रोवाइड कर सकते? हमने डिसेबिलिटी एक्ट के बारे में पढ़ा है, डिसेबिलिटी कार्ड कुछ होना चाहिए. उससे कुछ my mind just exploded and I was like मुझे मास्टर्स करनी ही नहीं है.
Psychology में नहीं करनी है.
मुझे पता ही नहीं मुझे क्या करना है and I took a gap year. I was like, "Hey, this feels very wrong. Doing psychology feels wrong."
Okay.
And in my 1 year, I did a lot of internships. I worked at Amar Jyoti also. I was working in Srilampur community with social emotional learning with TFI, that light up leads. And then I realized, ठीक है, मुझे social work and mental health करना है. And this is how I can work on these interventions, the intersectionalities. So I don't know how therapists do it honestly. अगर मेरे पास कोई client आ रहा है मुझे बता रहा है that I have a abusive father, I don't know how to not go to the father. And I don't know like how to just be like, let's practice something, let's work one-on-one. I feel very helpless as a social worker. I need to like go beyond, I need to enter their rooms or like just do something at a societal level. So
I think there, just putting in my psychologist perspective would be very interesting, because when we get such clients where our environment cannot always be healthy, and we are all not very privileged कि हम हमेशा ही healthy environment रहे. Everybody will have some sort of trigger, some sort of stressors. So teaching that client that coping skills, कि despite this environment you can exist, and there are coping strategies that you can use for your mental sanity. I think that is what a psychologist does. But I like how you said कि not going to the father is something you won't be able to stop.
Yeah, I like hats off to therapists who are able to be patient with the process. I get very angry and impatient. But no, social work is great if you have the heart and the capacity to burn yourself out sometimes. You can take up this profession. Job openings are a lot. You can earn well in this field. People think कि नहीं कर सकते. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is possible.
Also, Sanjana, is social work equated to just NGO work?
No,
what do you have to say?
Not at all.
Okay.
There's so much.
Help us with more opportunities that individuals can get apart from NGOs. I think NGOs is something that any layman would be aware of. But NGOs के अलावा, where else can somebody in this field work?
So you can work in legal spaces also. You can work in advocacy, policy changes. You can work in designing mental health interventions. कि अगर मुझे इस जगह पे कुछ डिलीवर करना है तो हम उसको डिजाइन कैसे करें. You can work in community mental health. So basically it would mean working with the government in developing multiple schemes that come. For example, during COVID, one of the work that I did was, we know that they had released certain direct bank transfer benefits to laborers during COVID because they lost their daily wage. And I would see कि लोगों के पास पैसे नहीं है, government provide कर रही है, पर उनके पास पहुंच क्यों नहीं रहे? Where's the gap? So as a social worker, I researched कि these are the gaps. I helped a community of 300 people with the help of a remote team because everything was remote at that time, and helped all of them with their documentation, connected them with government services, got the transfer benefits to them, so that you can work with the government also in that case. For example, Hagdarshak is one of the organizations that essentially does this work. You can also work in writing grants, writing funds, so people who need these services, you do an entire stakeholder analysis कि ये पैसा कैसे mental health में काम आएगा, इसको कैसे करें. You can do that. There are organizations like Anjali that work on teaching the community these are your rights. That is also such an empowering tool, right? Just communicating कि हमारे पास Mental Health Care Act 2017 है and उसके तहत आपकी ये rights हैं. So there are multiple areas you can work. You can work in school setups also.
Schools, colleges,
hospitals में social workers की इतनी need होती है. Even few people join corporate setups with CSR initiatives, so you can go there as well. You can continue to do PhD in social work. You can be a professor, researcher. There's so much scope. So when I studied my masters in social work, I studied economics, politics, culture. I studied disability. I studied praxis, which is participatory methods of how to include your community in your work.
Right.
So you have all these tools in your up your sleeve.
Great. I think that is quite diverse, and I think SCL is also something very important. Both from mental health perspective as well as social work.
Yeah.
And I would like to mention here that at PsyK also we have a project called Project Skillshala. So it's a very interesting project. We reach out to different schools and we do various life skill personality development workshops for them. Again, just to build around the social emotional learning part and help them become more mentally, have them build these mental capabilities. So again, that is something very interesting that we
Yeah,
do.
no, that's great work. I think SEL is a very powerful tool in school setups. I myself have worked in it, and it's great that PsyKlife is doing this work.
Yes. Okay, I think we've had a lot of important discussions, a lot of serious conversations.
Yeah.
And since you're somebody who works a lot around, these things,
Yeah.
I do have an interesting segment, interesting game for you. Okay. Thank you, Sanjana. I think हमारी conversation काफी insightful थी. There were a lot of important things that our listeners and viewers would also be able to take up. I have a fun segment for you now, a fun game.
Okay.
It's called What Would You Do? Okay, so as somebody who holds so much of experience, I would really like to know what would you do in these hypothetical situations. Fine, are we good to start? Yeah. Okay. So my first situation is that you are attending a community event and there you notice that there's a lack of accessibility for people with disabilities. What steps would you take?
So it's very important for any public space to have accessible measures in place. There is something called access audit, and this is available online. Anyone can do an access audit in their community, in their public space, either be school, college, hospital, the place you work, anywhere, and you get a score.
Right.
According to that score, you know exactly where all do you need to improve.
So questions are such that do they have a ramp or not?
Yeah.
I have heard of this.
So even suppose one question is, do you have a lift? Great, lift है. But lift कितनी बड़ी है? Is it they exactly measure the inches that it should be? Is it big enough that the ideal size of wheelchair would be able to enter?
Right.
Okay. Lift में enter कर लिया. If a blind person is operating the lift individually, how will they choose the floor? So every marking should have the braille version also.
Right.
It should have a speaker so that it announces the floor. It should have a phone, or it should have some alarm that they can reach out for them.
Or some person who's available just for assistance.
So it's very important. पहले तो अगर तुम कोई भी इवेंट कर लो, make it accessible friendly, disabled friendly. You should know, and especially if you're inviting somebody who is from the disabled community, you need to have those measures in place. Because one thing that I learned in my disability classroom was that accessibility helps everyone.
Right.
Accessibility is not just for people who are disabled. Yes. For example, how much would it hurt you if you make a ramp instead of stairs? If you don't have the budget for both, just make the ramp.
Exactly, that's easier.
Right? So, just thinking from this lens, from the very foundation, when you're building anything, think of equitable access to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
That helps. What would you do if you got an opportunity to create a social media campaign for mental health awareness? What themes, messages, activities would you want to do?
So my social media is quite dry, if you would have seen, because I just get so confused when it comes to social media. इतने सारे लोग उसे use करते हैं, इतना different perception होता है. And my ideal way would be to keep things as unfiltered and as honest as possible, and to not preach. So if you want to do something mental health related, don't just start preaching ये करो वो करो. ये बोल दो कि this is something that helped me, what helped you?
Right.
Why don't you share? And provide them different mediums of sharing, anonymously or with the name, right? So maybe these would be ways to keep it safe in sharing, also keeping it real. For example, I think one of the last posts that I had that I uploaded myself was just a photograph of me, and uske niche I wrote like no filter, because I think it's important for people to know that skins don't look this way. Like today also I've put on makeup. This is not how I look. I have a lot of acne. So I think just keeping it real on social media, especially for mental health, is very important.
I was just having this discussion with somebody that they mentioned that social media is fake. Okay, so that is something that we've been hearing. I added another layer to it just from my understanding that I feel social media fakes us are the incomplete. So we are putting elements of ourselves out there which are probably real but which are incomplete. So I'm probably sharing about my good day which has happened, but I'm not sharing about the not so good parts. My next question to you: as a social worker, if the community faces a lot of challenges to access mental health resources, what would you do in order to address this challenge?
I would ask them what's the challenge. If it's a logistical challenge, for example, translating all the resources in their regional language, is it a behavioral challenge that they just don't want to access because of stigma? Is it some other challenge? For example, do they have a water crisis which is more important right now than a mental health?
Right.
So I would literally ask and then implement.
Okay. So asking would be our first go-to step. I think that's interesting. The next question is very interesting. What if you had an opportunity to advise a film director to represent a character with disability? What would your recommendations be, keeping in mind authenticity and this sensitivity of the topic?
My recommendation would be hire someone who is actually disabled and not pretending to be disabled. My recommendation would be hire a disabled script writer to build that character and not somebody who is non-disabled
or comes from a privileged background.
We do not understand that disabled people are also professionals and they are into various professions.
Right.
We just need to hire them.
Right.
That is the only way to do justice to the cause that you want to portray.
Right. I think that's a beautiful recommendation, Sanjana. If you were to advocate for mental health policies at the government level in order to reduce stigma, what changes would you recommend?
We already have a Mental Health Act to 2017 in place. My recommendation would be to implement it better. For example, we do have district mental health program in which we have public healthcare centers in every district, which is supposed to have a psychiatrist and a visiting psychologist for the people. So to just ensure that these things are being implemented. The funding is very less to mental health in India and it only goes to some very specific mental health establishments right now. We also need to decentralize it a bit, give it to smaller, more local community leaders of mental health.
Right.
I think a top-down, a bottom-up approach would be good.
Yes, okay. And my last question would be, if you could come up with a community-based suicide awareness campaign, tailoring to the diverse population so that your message reaches them effectively, what would you do?
I think we already have this in place.
Yes.
We have a youth advocacy fellowship, which has a very diverse group. So we have people from disability, from different genders and sexuality, and these are all community leaders who work with their respective NGOs or have their own setups. So we are training them into policy making, advocacy. They have undergone a gatekeeping course, and now we are helping them build interventions for their own communities and how will they best do that. Outlook will be providing them with supervision, mentorship, so that they are able to build that in their own regional communities. And we have people from Delhi, Mumbai and Pune, so it's also widespread in that sense.
Great, great. I'm so flattered by the kind of work you're doing and just getting to know you more about your experiences. I hope you had fun having this conversation.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. And I really commend all the efforts that you've put to, make PsyK Talk such a comprehensive platform for budding psychologists, professionals. I think it's great the work that you're doing. It involves a lot of passion. So great job. I'm very excited to see how much you grow and where all you go.
I'm sure that it's going to be, with you definitely, because it's amazing to have guests like you come and share their experiences. So thank you so much for the episode today. And we will connect soon again.
Yes.
With this, we come to the end of another heartfelt episode of the PsyK Talks. It was a complete delight talking to Sanjana, and I hope that all of us gained some important informations and knowledge around the same. We will be back with another episode, and we would love to hear about the topics and professionals who you would like us to invite. And do give us a follow on Instagram at @thepsyklife and drop in your comments and make sure to subscribe. Thank you. Take care.